A young woman in the UK took a pen and a blank piece of paper and drafted a novelty check to herself for exactly £1 million. Along with the specific amount, she added a chronological deadline to cash this check from the National Lottery by the time she reached her 35th birthday. 1 week after she turned 34, her numbers were drawn. She won exactly £1 million, hitting the jackpot well before her self-imposed deadline. Mathematical probability suggests the win was a random accident, yet the player had spent years carrying physical documentation that predicted the exact currency, amount, and time frame. We're left to investigate if these chronological matches are simply impossible statistical glitches or evidence of a pattern where winners actively manifest their fortunes. The UK winner follows a specific behavioral pattern seen in many high-stakes players, using physical objects to anchor a future jackpot in the present. Cynthia Stafford used a similar ritual. She wrote the figure $112 million on a scrap of paper, placed it under her pillow, and meditated on that specific amount for weeks. In May 2007, her Mega Millions numbers were drawn. The resulting jackpot was exactly $112 million. For these players, physical anchors are tools intended to manage their own psychology. Stafford described her process as a way to maintain a state of total belief, filtering out the common skepticism associated with the game. This act of documentation attempts to bridge the gap between a passive fantasy and a concrete expectation. By committing a goal to paper, players shift their focus from the odds of the game to the certainty of the result. Sometimes this expectation manifests without a conscious ritual. The goal bypasses the waking mind and arrives as a subconscious blueprint during a deep dream state. An Australian player reported dreaming of a specific sequence of numbers, 1, 7, 11, and 22. He took that exact 4-number sequence into the physical world and played them in the Powerball, winning a $30 million prize. Other times, the expectation is set by an external source. In 2017, Carolyn O'Brien visited a fortune teller who stopped her as she was leaving. The psychic grabbed her arm and described a vision of O'Brien holding a giant check and cheering the words, "I did it." Years later, O'Brien won $3 million on a scratch-off. When she claimed the prize, she stood with the giant novelty check and shouted those exact words, "I did it." Whether the prophecy is physical, subconscious, or external, the common thread is a winner who possesses an unshakable expectation of wealth before the first ball is ever drawn. These stories seem miraculous, but they exist within a specific mathematical framework. Globally, hundreds of millions of people participate every week in continuous random drawings. This is the law of large numbers. Astronomical odds become statistical certainty given a massive sample size. Within this vast dataset, someone is statistically guaranteed to have a premonition matching a future draw. But math cannot explain the individual's subjective experience of the win. Statistical probability explains why the luck landed, but it cannot explain the feeling of holding a physical prophecy that actually came true. For the woman in the UK, the math was secondary to the result. After collecting her £1 million prize, she framed the original fake check and hung it on her wall. It remains there as proof that regardless of the mathematical odds, the most audacious, self-authored prophecies sometimes come due.